Time Not Here by David Caldecott, me. Part 2, Chapter 7. The alarm rang at 7 a.m. sharp. Daniel was already awake. He'd barely slept, tossing and turning about whether to be happy or afraid at the news that Laythe now had a job, or at least said that he did. By this point, there was no way of knowing that anything he told Daniel was true. The look on his face whenever he succeeded in confusing, freaking out, or fooling Daniel was enough to see it. He enjoyed playing psychological games with his mark. There was no reason to think he would stop now and suddenly start telling the truth. "Wait," Sam said when they met for drinks a few hours later. "This could be good for you." "What do you mean?" Daniel took a big gulp of a single malt scotch. "If he does have a job, then there'll be new people for him to fuck with. He can get his jollies off manipulating his boss, his colleagues, and even his fucking customers if he wants. That might reduce his impulse to do it to you, if he's getting his fix elsewhere. Maybe, or it could make him worse." "I don't think so. It's probably been so intense the last few weeks because he's just been sat at home, smoking weed and unable to mess with anyone else. You've been getting the brunt of it." Sam's suggestion sunk in as Daniel went to the bar for another drink. "Plus, he'll actually be making some money," Sam continued when he got back, "so won't need to invent crazy stories about his brother to get you to pay for his weed." "I guess so, but what about the fact that I'm no longer useful to him?" Daniel asked, unable to let his guard down enough to believe that he might actually benefit from this. "Well, if you disappear, he definitely can't pay the rent all himself. What's the job, a bartender role, right?" "Yeah." "Exactly, not megabucks. If he wants to stay in the house, then he needs you to keep paying your share." "You're right. It would be inconvenient for him if I stopped paying my half each month." Daniel sat back and gave himself permission to sigh with relief. "I guess if you want to give yourself the best shot, you should drip feed him suggestions that your business is getting close to taking off again, or that you're thinking of buying a car, anything that he might want for himself. That will make it in his best interest to stay on your good side and not go too nuts." Daniel laughed, playing the prick at his own game. "Exactly," Sam said as he said goodnight. Daniel stayed in the bar for a few more minutes before standing to put his coat on. Finishing off his glass, he looked over at the stylish bottle of single malt behind the bar, just over half full. He took off his coat again. One more won't hurt. Sam was right. The day Laythe started his new job, the intensity of life in the house reduced dramatically in 3 noticeable ways. First, his shifts went on to 3 a.m., so Daniel had the house entirely to himself for half the nights of the week. Those nights were quiet and peaceful. Daniel could do what he wanted without having to hide in his room or deal with a bullshit story. Second, whenever Daniel was in the same room as Laythe, it would be in the afternoon. Laythe would be so tired from the previous night's work that there was none of the language games or gaslighting anymore. Finally, Laythe had clearly turned his attention to attaining power at his new job, revealing his true colors inadvertently while telling Daniel about his schemes for promotion. This had the added bonus of helping Daniel to build his own defenses by studying the man's methods as a third-party observer. "So, my boss Felix," Laythe started one night after his shift ended early. "He's a wanker, inherited the business from his parents and clearly has not been handling the thing well. He has this silly casino furniture business on the side that makes no money. And the bar he's got in the prime location on the waterfront, it's a fucking shambles." "Is he an okay boss?" Daniel asked. "Well, he's a fool, so he's perfect. Last thing I need is a man I can't, influence. I don't know though, matey. If I'm honest with myself, I know that if I put my mind to it, I could make myself his right-hand man and slowly start running the place. The question is, do I really want to?" Daniel thought for a second before responding. "I'm sure you'd be able to. What's standing in your way?" The curiosity he had for his enemy's tactics kept him engaged, instead of making an excuse to leave. "The assistant manager, some African bitch who's decided to become the matriarch of the place. She's definitely threatened by me. She scowled at me right after Felix pat me on the back and thanked me for sorting out a customer's problem." "So what are you gonna do?" I don't know. I could take her out. Laythe rolled back with a laugh that sent a chill down Daniel's spinal column. He then spoke more about Felix. He told Daniel about the man's fears and motivations, his beliefs and values. He'd figured all of this out after just a few days of working there. It reminded Daniel of all the strange questions Laythe had asked him throughout their friendship. Questions about how he'd react to someone mugging him, or what his relationship with his parents were like. Whether there was resentment towards them for not helping him more when his business went under. He hadn't felt ill feelings towards his parents before that conversation, but he certainly did after. Isolate your enemies, he had remembered from that book about power. He must have been trying to isolate Daniel from his parents, as well as anyone who might tell him not to keep buying shit for Laythe. Come to think of it, Laythe had ranted on at length one night about how Sam wasn't a good friend, how he wasn't there for Daniel. That conversation happened just after Daniel had moved into his great Yarmouth house with all the plates and knives from that restaurant. Laythe was still talking, but Daniel wasn't listening. Later that week, Daniel came home to find Laythe stood over the cat, looking concerned. "Does he look sick to you?" Laythe asked him. "No. Is he sick?" "What do you think? He's not been eating all day and hasn't touched his water at all." Daniel felt that intense fear flowing through his body again, the feeling he'd now tuned into as his signal that Laythe was up to no good. He tried to conceal his suspicions. "Shit, any idea what it is?" "None, but I'm really worried, matey." "Should we take him to the vet?" Daniel still couldn't help himself from going into problem-solving mode. "Yeah, great idea, Daniel. Take him to a fucking vet who'll charge us £200 just to stick needles in him and tell us they don't know what's wrong." I'm just trying to help." "Are you?" he shrieked at Daniel with an over-the-top "I'm hurt" expression. He continued to pile on the guilt. "I've come all the way up to Yorkshire again, I have no money, and now my cat's going to die because I can't afford to take him to the vet." "Wait, what about your job?" "That wanker hasn't paid me yet. He keeps saying there's administrative error, but I think he's going to try and rip me off." "Don't worry, I'll pay your precious rent. It'll just take me a few more months till I can get him to fold." Daniel had told himself that the occasional £50 was a price worth paying to not have to listen to all this bullshit. But £200 plus? That was way too much. No way am I going to give Laythe that kind of money for him to spend on who knows what. He didn't even know if the cat was sick, or if it was just another story, or if he was lying about not being paid too. When Laythe left the house to start his afternoon shift, Daniel watched the cat for a while and paid close attention to its behavior. It was sick. The poor thing would immediately vomit up any water it drank, despite Daniel's best efforts to lure it to the bowl to eat. It wouldn't go near it. Daniel wanted to help, but chances were that Laythe wouldn't even take the cat to the vet if he did give him the money. Instead, he'd spend the money on weed as usual. Daniel decided that he would take the cat to the vet himself and hand the money to them directly if it came to that. As the evening drew on, he noticed a bottle of bleach that was out of place. Normally, it sat in a cupboard under the sink. It was now on the counter next to the sink, the space where Laythe usually filled the cat's food bowl in. Bleach? A chill that started in his toes spread through his body. Would he really poison his own cat, just for money? A few days went by and the bleach bottle kept reappearing on the counter. Daniel would put it back under the sink each time he spotted it, but it kept returning. The cat continued to not eat or drink. Finally, Laythe restarted the conversation about the vet. It came after a lengthy rant about how bad the social welfare system is at actually helping people in need, and how important it was for friends to help each other out instead. Daniel was in no mood to play along. "Look, Laythe, if the cat is sick, then I'll take him to the vet myself. But there's no point going back and forth about what might be wrong with him or worrying about how much it's going to cost. If it costs a lot, I'll sort it. But I'll take him there myself." He walked out of the room and started getting ready for bed. When he came downstairs again for a final cigarette, he asked Laythe a question that seemed subtle enough. "He hasn't changed his diet at all, has he?" Laythe took a deep breath and cleared his throat, in exactly the same way as on the first night in the house when he had pointed that knife at Daniel. "You tell me." Magically, the cat made a full recovery over the next few days. The bleach bottle also, coincidentally, stopped reappearing on the counter. Laythe returned home from work and went straight to his room, leaving Daniel to relax alone in his own room, falling asleep watching a travel vlogger fight his way across the Sahara on a camel. He heard the front door slam and jolted up in shock. He rushed over to the window, looked out to the front of the house, and saw Laythe dressed smartly, striding towards town. It's 1 a.m. Where the hell is he going? Daniel wondered as he lay down and tried to get back to sleep. As he drifted off, he promised himself that he wouldn't eat any meals prepared by Laythe. Who knows what he might slip into my soup? His dreams were very visual. The most intense one was an odd blend of science fiction, interstellar travel, and the challenges of his current life, a retelling of the story of his struggles in the far-removed stage of space. He had snuck aboard a spaceship, headed for a dark and remote planet at the edge of the galaxy. Orbiting this planet was a military base, which had been overtaken by Laythe, who had adorned himself with medals and trophies of war. Daniel was on a mission to liberate the people of the planet from Laythe's tyranny. He arrived at the base and found 2 women. As he approached them, he saw that they were waitresses from his restaurant, girls he worked with every day and quite enjoyed. They were fawning over Laythe, listening enraptured to his every word. They had fallen into his devious trap. Laythe spotted Daniel hiding behind a stack of weapons crates. Laythe cried out with a rage and bolted across the deck towards him, holding a long medieval sword in each hand. Too fearful to fight, Daniel fled and escaped back to his own ship, docked in the last available bay. There he found the admiral of the fleet, and convinced her to arrest Laythe before he caused any more harm to the people of the planet below. The admiral found and arrested Laythe, confining him to the ship's brig. They undocked from the now liberated planetary base and started the long journey home. Daniel went to Laythe's cell. As he stood in front of the blue force field that locked the prisoner in, it suddenly vanished, leaving nothing to protect Daniel from Laythe's fury. Laythe leapt out of his cell to strangle Daniel, and the guards stood, watching. As did the admiral, who was now there too. She looked on, as if she was Laythe's mother, proud of her boy. Daniel felt the moment of his death approaching when he heard Sam's voice in his head saying, "You are not the first. He has done this before." Suddenly, Daniel found himself on a different ship, stood in the bridge of what looked like the USS Enterprise from the Star Trek series. There was a captain who stood tall with an imposing posture. Yet he had the same kind eyes as Celeste, the woman he met at the conspiracy theory lecture. The captain told Daniel that he was the Admiral's other son, the more righteous and moral one, that his mother and Laythe were hell-bent on exposing weaknesses in power structures to open gaps for themselves and their family to fill. He said this was false, impure, and dishonest. At that moment, he was back in the brig, with Laythe throttling him. He felt his last breath as he awoke, abruptly, covered in sweat and panting. It took him a moment to remember he was back in the house in York. That didn't make him feel any better.